All right, everybody, we're back. So I have the fabric on all my ornament balls, and now it's time to add the stick, our trim, and then our Mod Podge. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to prepare an area so that I can have a place for my Mod Podge to dry. So what I did is I have these containers, and I have a bunch of leftover floral blocks. You can use whatever you want to, but this is just what I have. You can use a box. There's several different things that you can use to be able to prop these up. So after you put the Mod Podge on, they can dry. So just for this, I'm going to put some hot glue in the bottom. And I'm just going to set the block in there. It doesn't have to be perfect, and we're going to set that to the side. All right. So the first thing we want to do is we want to add our stick. So there's a couple ways that you can go about it. You can either measure the circumference of your ornament ball, or you can use string. I'm going to show you how to use string because not everybody has a flat measuring tape like this, a seamstress tape. So I'm going to show you how to use the string. And I'm just going to use some trim that I'm going to use for this. That way I'm not wasting anything. So what I'm going to do is on the top of my ball first, I'm just going to take an ink pen, and I'm just going to look and decide where my center is going to be at over here. And I'm going to mark that. I'm going to set my trim to the edge of that mark. So you want to cut this as straight as you possibly can. So just to be warm and fuzzy, I'm going to cut this straight, and there's a line in my, this is a gross grain ribbon, so there's a line that I can see. And what I'm going to do to hold it there, because this ball is fairly large, is I'm just going to take a pin and pin it down. Now the way that you're going to be able to tell you're going around the correct circumference of your ball is because your ribbon will lay flat. So now that you've got completely around, you want to take your scissors and you want to cut this flush up against the other piece. That way it's an exact cut. So we've already marked this side. We have to mark the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my ribbon there, and I'm going to fold this back here, and I'm going to line these up exactly. So you have to remember you're going to be like very picky on this. That way your topiary, your sticks will line up and this will stack. So now that I've got my half of diameter, I'm going to pull it around. I'm going to make sure that my ribbon's laying flat. And then I'm going to mark my other center point. So we're going to set that to the side. You're going to need something really, really sharp to stab through here initially. I have an ice pick. You can get an awl or, whatever you choose to do this. But you're going to stab your hole. And the whole idea is you want to make sure that you're going straight down as possible. So just take your time. I've stabbed so many things with my ice pick, it's probably starting to get dull on the tip. I hate to let go of it and get a new one. It just brings back so many memories, kind of thing. Now, don't have a panic attack because your fabric is going to come back out with this. And it's going to pucker up a bit, but it's the top. It doesn't matter. But I stabbed it in there a couple times to make sure I had a good hole. And now I'm going to come over this side and do it again. And the reason I'm doing it so slow, if you do it too quick, when you stab down into this, it might go to the right, might go left, and then your stick doesn't sit right. Notice I'm twisting it back and forth. That helps it go straight too and not wander off. Now, some of you, what I recommend for your next step, this is puckered up. Take your scissors and cut around that edge just a little bit, or take a box cutter and slice it just a little bit. I tried doing all the stick and stuff before putting the fabric on, and it actually ended up being pretty difficult keeping track of center. So that's why I chose to do it after the fabric. And I'm going to pull this, make sure my fabric puckers up over here so I can do the same thing. And the next hole that you're going to make is going to be bigger. You got to have a starting hole because it's kind of hard to get the large stick in without a starting hole. Even if you drill wood and you have to use a really large drill bit, you have to use a smaller bit first. So that's kind of what we're doing. Because the next piece that comes in is the round file to really get in there and make the hole. So once again, in our starter hole, I'm going to take my round file. And it just gets so much easier now that we made what is called, when you do that, it's called a pilot hole. So that's basically what we did. Now, I'm not trying to go all the way through this wall at all. But I kind of flip it over and I'm checking to make sure I'm going straight. But I went about 5-6 inches into the ball is what I did. Now my fabric puckered out. We're not worried about that. So I'm going to let my ball work for me, and I'm going to twist it. So now we have our holes for our stick. So this is the doweling that we're going to use. And right now we only need to put one of them in. And that's going to be your base one. And we're not ready to make these permanent yet. So if you're actually going to put this in a potted plant as a topiary, you're going to want to replace this later on with a longer dowel rod that's going to make it more secure in your potted plant. So now I'm going to stake it in here, and I'm going to do what's called, we're going to do what is a dry test on how these stack. So I'm going to flip you over to the front camera so you can watch me stack them. Okay, so we have our bottom ball. So this is going to be the next one. So I've already got the stick in it. And I'm going to take a stick that doesn't have a ball on it to go ahead and start this hole. And what I'm seeing here is I need to cut a little bit of the fabric out of the way, because the stick is a little bit bigger than the file. So you kind of just want to gently push those together. So the next piece, I actually only have one stick in it because the stick went all the way through. If you don't think that you can get the stick all the way through, cut this in half and do it just like I did these, where you just use one stick on both sides. But as you can see, I've got the stick all the way through. And the sticks are colliding, so that's a good sign. So this is why we're dry fitting. That stick's gonna have to back up a little bit. So I knew I had more room in the big ornament ball, so that's why I pushed it the way that I did. So the last piece, I've already got the stick in it ready, so I'm just going to take it out. And slide it on, and we're making sure that it's straight and stable. So now that we're ready to decorate it. Now that our dry fit went really, really well, see, it's really, really stable. The bigger the dowel rod, the better off it is. I'm going to show you how to do the collar pieces later on, but you don't have to add them. I like the way that they added decor to it. So now we're just going to take these apart. And now we're ready to decorate. The one that I'm going to decorate and show you how to do is the one that's got the stripe piece, and it's got another piece of fabric that goes around the center. And it's going to be Harlequin. And the reason that I did that was to give, so it wouldn't be all straight up and down, and to give it a little bit of dimension. So let's get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to go ahead and pull the stick out, and I'm going to get my trim. Now the trim that I used for this is a 1/4 inch gross grain ribbon. And when I do trim work, I use a mini hot glue gun. I have an arsenal of glue guns, but when I do trim work, I want something smaller because it's easier to manage. So when doing your trim work, you want to make sure that you know that you want your balls to nestle. So you have to have a stopping point. So I found the best stopping point when I was doing mine. So what I do to put my trim on is I put a little bit of glue, just a little bit, to start the piece. And then along this edge, I'm going to lay a bead of glue. And when I lay my glue, I go right to left just because that's what's comfortable for me and how I can make a straighter line. So depending on how fast you move will depend on how much of a bead of glue you put down. Remember, you're working with low temp because if you use high temp, you might melt the styrofoam and you don't want to do that. Now, if you can't control how much hot glue you squeeze out, what you can do is you can go back to the fabric glue, the craft bond, and you can tack it down with the hot glue gun and then use the fabric glue with a paintbrush to paint it on. Now, when you get down here to the bottom, you can do one of two things. You can just cut this off and start over, flip it over, or you can just roll it up and make a pin down there and start again. That's solely up to you and what you're able to do, but I'm not going to go all the way down. And if you see little frays, this would now be the time. Make sure you cut them, tuck them in, push them out of the way because it's going to happen. And if you don't have a mini glue gun and you're going to run out to buy one to do this with, I recommend that you get the Gorilla Glue gun, mini glue gun. That is by far the best glue gun I have ever had, to the point that I literally messaged Gorilla Glue and asked them why they don't make a full-size one. I can get gross grain ribbon. I order it in 50-yard rolls off of eBay. And that's actually far cheaper than buying it at Walmart, because I only pay about $7 for a 50-yard roll. I wasn't sure when I started doing these if it was going to be worth all the work. And then in the end, when it didn't take me really that long, and I was extremely happy with the result, it was worth it all day long. Because I finally had the amazing topiaries that I'd always wanted, but I just wouldn't spend the money. And this is so much fun because you can customize them to your decor and not have to go all over the place searching for the perfect ribbon and the perfect pattern. You could just go buy fabric. And there's so many just amazing fabrics out there. And the big ornament balls that you make for your that you get for your Christmas tree that are so expensive. Now you can make custom ones, and you can even apply this to that to have a totally different Christmas ornament than anybody else. Because those large ornaments are pretty pricey. And in the past, when I bought them, I wait till they go on sale. And then I use them on my tree the following year. The biggest thing that made me want to do these is I loved the Harlequin and the Mackenzie Childs looking ones, and I just wasn't going to pay the price. Now, if you can't, have a steady hand like I do, by far, get the kind of ribbon or trim that you can deal with. You can get it in 3/8 inch, and it's a little bit wider, and it's a little bit easier to lay the bead of glue, and it's not really going to cover your ornament ball. I literally, except for the styrofoam balls, I had everything on hand to make these And a lot of this was basically scrap fabric, or I had ordered it for, another project, but it was basically all scrap, just, sitting around here doing nothing. So in the end, I didn't end up having that much vested in this project. Because I keep Mod Podge in my shop, and I kept the Harlequin fabric on hand for all kinds of stuff, because Harlequin's just a timeless material. You can't go wrong with it. But I had fun creating these. I took my time to get the look and the appearance that I wanted. I had already made some ornaments for my Christmas tree, and I had some of the fabric left over from that. So I incorporated that fabric into these topiaries. And you can do these for so many different seasons. And you can put different elements in them. They have like large peppermints at Hobby Lobby. You can incorporate into these. It's just, there's so many different things that you can do. I am definitely the crafter that if I can buy it cheaper and not make it, I'm going to. I'm not going to be the one who takes $70-something for craft supplies to make something I can buy for $20. All right, so we're going to set this aside, and now we're going to get ready to put on the strip that goes around the center of the ball. So depending on if you choose to do this or not, depending on which ornament ball you choose to do this with, is going to depend on how wide this needs to be. The one thing that I haven't found Harlequin fabric in is the print running the right way. Basically, on the ornament ball, it would run this way. On the large one, it kind of doesn't bother me, but Harlequin print to me runs this way. So that's why I chose to incorporate it in the way that I did, because I really, really wanted it. I have Harlequin picks. So what I'm going to do is I'm putting my prints together. And I'm going to take this ruler and I'm going to the very bottom of the diamonds. And I'm going to straighten that edge out. And once again, I'm going to go to the very top of the diamonds. Now, if I put this fabric straight on to that piece, it's going to show through the trim work, and the red is going to show through that. I didn't want that. So you can take some plain white fabric. I had felt around my shop, so that's why I used felt. And I measure, and my piece is just about 2 1/4 inches. I'm going to cut some of my felt off, and I'm going to fold it in half. And I've got my cutting mat here. And what I'm going to do is you use your bottom edge. This is your straight edge right here where you folded it. That's going to be your straight edge. So I'm going to take my cutting ruler and I'm going to cut this just under the 2 3/4. So I'm going to cut this straight. So I've got a straight edge to work with. And I'm going to take my ornament ball. And if you've got a bad side, now would be the good time to find it. Like I said, this is just merely to keep the black and the stripe from showing through on the Harlequin, to make it a whiter color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a little bit of hot glue, very, very thin, because we don't want this to be really, really lumpy. I'm going to set my ball up on edge. And I'm going to put that in the center. Felt has a little bit of stretch to it also, so I'm kind of stretching it as I go a little bit. That way it fits snug to the ball. You kind of have to ignore the stripes. But it's sitting pretty good on all the other stripes. So right next to this one, so I don't have a lot of lump. Very little hot glue again. And then I'm going to fold that back. And cut along that so I don't have an overlapping seam. So I'm just double checking that it's sitting right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this edge off. You can't hot glue along fabric because the hot glue will show through. So once again, and if you're afraid you're going to burn your hand, do it directly to the ball. Very thin on the hot glue. You don't need much. Before you go pulling and tugging on this, you're going to want this to cool down. So if you decide to do, a strip like this, that's how you do it. And then you're going to really want to tug on this to stretch it out. So I'm going to run my hand along it because you want it to round with the ball and be smooth. So I'm kind of tugging on this pretty good so it'll smooth out. Then I'm going to fold this back. Once again, right next to this other seam, not on top of it, next to it, I'm going to lay a bead of hot glue. And what I was trying to do is I can see through this well enough that I'm trying to get my harlequin, my diamonds to match up. So I was kind of pulling on it hard enough to get my diamonds to match up. So it wouldn't be a noticeable seam. So that's what I was doing there. So I'm holding this so it cools down because I did pull on it and I don't want it to snap back. So we'll see how good I did. And now we're going to cut this off. Not bad. Pretty good. Can't hardly notice it. Okay, so we're going to get this out of the way. And what we're going to do, we're going to gently go around here and cut the frays off. If you're not secure in your scales, because I'm going to put diamonds around here. And you can't put those down first. But what you can do is you can put trim around here first That way you don't have to worry about frays when you Mod Podge, because that's what we're going to do now. So make sure before you go to Mod Podge that your area is clean, because you don't want any debris floating up into your project. I recommend that you use gloves for this part. I'm not going to. I'm just going to put my stick back in. And I'm also going to go around and clean, make sure that all my glue things are up. Everything's nice. And I'm going to show you a little trick, but you have to be careful when you do this. And I mean careful, because otherwise you're just going to heat up your other glue and everything's going to come off. But I have a heat gun, so I'm going to show you a quick little trick to getting spiders off. Take your heat gun, turn it on low. And they will just dissipate. But you have to be extremely careful doing this, that what the other stuff that you hot glued down doesn't come off. And you can do that on grapevines and other things. All right. So if you want to, you've got plenty of sticks. You can put 2 sticks in here to make it easier to handle, whatever you need to do. I have a brand new container of Mod Podge. And Mod Podge does carry quite a bit of odor with it. So just be careful of that. If you're a messy crafter, you're probably going to want to lay wax paper down. So I have bamboo skewers over here. I keep them on readily available on hand. I shook this up, but I like to stir it up just to make sure that it is good to go. And I'll leave the stick in there. So here's where you need the smooth paintbrush. That way your Mod Podge goes on really, really nice. And if you're somebody that drips, you're going to want to put a drop cloth down. But I'm going to start here at the center, because as I go, I'm going to make sure that my frays are tucked in. And I'm going to go underneath this so it'll lay down nicely. Start at my seam. I kind of get soupy with the Mod Podge. I get impatient about each brush stroke. So as you can see, I just kind of scoop quite a bit up with my brush. You can use a bigger brush. It just really needs to be a good brush so that so you don't get a bunch of streaks in your Mod Podge. So as I come around and I have places where my fabric's up, I'm gonna tuck my brush under there and then use the Mod Podge to lay it down. So before I put any kind of more trim on these, it says 15-20 minutes, but I'm gonna wait 24 hours. And the reason I'm gonna wait 24 hours is because that's for another coat. So I want everything good and set in before I go putting heat on this, which is what you're doing with the hot glue. So the biggest key to this is with Mod Podge is that you're making nice, even strokes. So just a little assist from the top. And now I'm gonna make sure that I don't go in the hole because we kind of don't want this dripping in the hole. I'm going up with my brush strokes so that it's nice and even. And I'm putting on a pretty, somewhere between liberal and thin coat. Because I want to make sure that this is good and sealed. It is fabric. And I want this to last a long time after all the hard work that I've put in. The better you are with Mod Podge, the quicker this will go. And if you don't have the patience to do this, I've seen a Mod Podge spray before. It might work. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to read the label. You can also use clear lacquer sprays. Make sure you get gloss. You just have to be really, really careful when you're dealing with fabric that it's not going to make the fabric bleed. And if you don't really know what you're doing with Mod Podge, put a thin coat on because you can always add more. The most important thing is not to show streaks. So I'm coming back along this edge to make sure that I got it really, really good. I'm going to make sure that my brush strokes on that are right to left. So this project, just for waiting for the Mod Podge to cure, actually ends up being a 2-day project. And of course, that just depends on the amount of trim that you put on. If you decide to put the bling on like I'm going to do, then it's going to be 2 days because you got to wait for the Mod Podge to cure. If you're just going to do fabric trim, like the gross grain ribbon or anything like that, it's a 1-day project. Now, when I go to do the bigger ornament, believe you me, I'm going to be using a bigger brush so that I can get better coverage faster. So now I'm just making sure there's no goopy lumps, making sure everything's nice and smooth. Make sure my seam's good and laid down. And now this one's ready to dry. So I'm just going to pull one of the sticks out. And I'm going to set it aside. All right, so now that you've got your trim on, your Mod Podge, we're going to let that sit for 24 hours. And then we're going to come back and we're going to finish this up. I'm going to show you how to put the final rhinestones on, how I cut them, everything like that. And then I'm going to show you how to do the neck pieces and stack them up.